and I don't know archaeologically whether it's true or not, that maybe the stones have been filled in with other stones between them to use it as a possible animal enclosure at a later date. But I don't know that. It might have been built that way. I don't know.
That's so cool. Oh, Andy.
Yeah,
and the only way of the only way of proving that would be to
not dig it up and knock them over.
Dig down around every single stone.
And then it started going on about how things lined up with it and all the rest of it. And I thought, well, and it said something stupid about, when you bisect the line, it lines up with this. And I thought, it's a circle. You bisect any circle anywhere, it's going to line up with north, south, depending on how you bisect it. I thought, what a stupid thing to say. And I thought, they probably don't mean this. So I got my phone out with my compass on. And sure enough, some of the bigger stones were prominently different stones, did line up exactly northeast, southwest. Oh, that was quite, bang on. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, it's a really nice little stone circle, actually. It's got a nice feel to it. Very difficult to find. No parking. Had to chat up a farmer to let me kind of park in a bit of a lay-by next to his farm, but which I think is a bit poor, seeing as it is a scheduled site. But But yeah, I've been wanting to get to that one for a long time because it's a bit of an obscure one up our way. But good.
It's not too far away from you.
No, it's not. About an hour and 20 minutes, something like that. So once you find it,
It sounds a bit like the Manitoul Monument. We went there on a trip, and I just thought there was going to be this massive monument, right? And I thought, well, where is it? And it's over there. And I thought, hang on a minute, there's nothing much to see other than this stone with a hole in it. And I just thought, unfortunately, when people take photographs of stone circles, they get it wrong, and they don't get the size right. We went to we had a trip to a site, and I had to go across a load of rivers. I left everybody else behind, took a load of photographs. And I was standing in the field. Well, where are these stones? And I thought, look down, and they were just in the grass. And I thought, right, okay,
This one's a good one, but it's like it's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem to connect with anything. I'm looking around for any signs of landscape, that leading you to anything or nothing. No. Strange. I'd love to know why they built it there.
I don't think we'll be able to get the answer to that. And the problem is, it's there's going to be loads of different answers to that question, isn't there? When, where, what, how?
Yeah.
Nothing's really.
But definitely worth a visit if you like your stone circles. Yeah.
And sorry to add the pun. Nothing's really set in stone, is it? So.
No.
Do you know editing this book? Me and Richard have been working on it for 12 years, and I finally finished it last night. And I just thought, right, I'll get the edit out to everybody. And I thought, I'm still not happy. And I thought, I can't be asked anymore. It's got to be done. But as you're editing it over a 12-year period, there's stuff that you wrote 12 years ago that you completely disagree with now. And that's not helpful. But anyway, let's crack on. So, anything from you, Richard?
No, nothing from me.
Apparently, you've had a book that we've we'll have to.
Yeah, I found a few errors. So.
Have you found the one about a certain member of the Romney family being married to a rap star? Yeah, that's in there deliberately, Richard. Anyway, okay. Anything from you, Bill?
Yes, groundbreaking news from the lovely Alice Roberts tonight.
Alice Roberts is banned.
She's banned. 8 or 9 o'clock. Listen to me now. She's going to reveal.
All right.
She's going to reveal. Are you sitting
Is
comfortably?
she? Is she going to take her top off?
She's going to reveal something. You'll be interested in. She's going to reveal, according to her, the very first evidence of the Julius Caesar invasion. Boom, boom. Silence.
Is it going to be Ebbsfleet? That's the thing?
And we can't see it because we're talking to you.
Oh, all right. Okay. Well, I get the blame for this. I'm sorry. I really am.
Thought you'd like to know that.
I really am.
So if you got catch up, which I haven't, you can watch it at some time.
Oh, right. You haven't got catch up.
No, I
Okay,
haven't. No, I'm not that advanced, I'm afraid.
No.
Thought you'd like to know that.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, thank you very much. I hope she don't take my stuff away from me about Caligula. I would really be annoyed with that. Right. Goff, anything from you?
No, nothing from me this week, thank you.
Yeah, I did have you sending me a WhatsApp thing, which I've still got to. I got to add that into for next week.
Well, I
know we're gonna. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so yeah, the Saqqara tomb review: hidden depths in ancient Egypt. That's the one. Right. So what I'm going to do now is, if we have any problems tonight, you just need to let me know. I'm still learning. Hopefully we're going to get straight into the images. And I'm just hoping that you're actually seeing a section of Hadrian's Wall. Is that what you're looking at, guys?
Not yet.
Still spinning round.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah.
And you got this?
Yep.
Brilliant. Okay. So I've actually got a 1965 print edition of Alan Sorrell's book, which is entitled Living History. And I've mentioned Alan Sorrell a few times. Alan Sorrell is this sort of artist, historian, archaeologist, reconstructor. This guy used to go around a lot of our archaeological sites, and he used to make amazing reconstruction drawings of them in color. I gotta open the door a minute. Come on, in, and get back into my flow. So this guy was the Richard Ambrose of the 1940s and 1950s, and if you know the name Richard Ambrose, you'll know the name. This was the guy who used to do all illustrations for Time Team. So Richard Ambrose was the guy who used to take a piece of pottery and used to reconstruct the whole Roman fort from it, right? But we're not talking in the same vein. So if you go to places like Caerwent and Clean, Chepstow Castle, what you used to see is an illustration on the board done by Alan Sorrell. Lots of them have been updated since, but one of the things with Alan Sorrell, he used to make these sites come alive with obviously figures, various interpretations of the landscape, and this was very familiar to all of us. So what I wanted to do, I've got 10 images tonight from this book. Alan Sorrell is mainly the Roman stuff, and I wanted to first of all say that we're looking at Walton Crags in Northumberland, and the one thing that hits you straight away is extremely stark. The one thing that is possibly wrong about this, or that it's trying to give somewhat, the idealistic Roman image of this landscape, is that figure there, the Aquifila, the standard bearer, who had been a legionary standard bearer. And one of the points that which I will say on the top tonight, is that when we think about Hadrian's Wall, the people actually garrisoning it a few years after it had been completed by roughly AD 130, a few years after Emperor Hadrian had left, were actually auxiliaries, not legionaries. Remember, legionaries are combat soldiers. These are people that don't sort of stand around defenses, sort of defending them, right? This is the work of the lowly auxiliary, right? So that's one point. And the other point to make is some of the buildings that are associated with something like Hadrian's Wall. Now, that building there is known as a turret, and hopefully you can see that little cursor on the screen. That's known as a turret, and that's known as a mile castle. Now, along its 75-mile length, or even more, so I can't tell you how many turrets and mile castles there were, because it's likely that it did extend further along the Cumbrian coastline. We do know that there were 16 forts, which were different from, for example, a mile castle and a turret. You can't get the exact number of turrets and mile castles on the internet, so we're not even going to go, or any of my research books. This place is known as Walltown Crags in Northumberland, and that's another point. Hadrian's Wall is primarily an English wall, right? It's obviously south of the Scottish border, and whenever we're talking about Hadrian's Wall, we're usually talking about Cumbria most of the time. When we're talking about Northumberland, there's a number of points that we'll look at when we think about these illustrations, for example. So I'm hoping that the technology is a little bit better, and obviously that the sound is a little bit better. All the illustrations are black and white today, but I sometimes say that when you've got black and white illustrations, you can see more detail in a way, because color can be a little bit distracting. So Hadrian's Wall, Walltown Crags, climbing up the steep hillside beyond is the words that Alan Sorrell actually uses. Far away are other deep clefts and steep hills, all faithfully followed by this continuous line of fortification, which was once. Now, this is the point. He says in the book, he says, a frontier defense system of Roman Britain. Is it a military defensive system? And people like me would argue no, it's more of a customs gate. And we'll explain a little bit of that when we look at Corbridge and we look at a place known as Staingate. So, but one thing I will say that doesn't take away from the majesty of Hadrian's Wall is, for example, these very words. It was cited and architecturally built with immense skill. Oh, those are my own words, by the way, and spanned the narrowest part of Britain. That's an interesting point. The narrowest part of Britain, from Bowness on the Solway Firth to Wallsend on the River Tyne. So there you go. And we see about when people talk about Hadrian's Wall, they talk about the word vallum, they talk about military way, they talk about linked forts, they talk about reinforcements, all these different things that we'll come across in the future. But the 16 forts are really important. The 16 forts provided alternative garrison troops for these turrets, for these mile castles. Usually lots of these forts that we're talking about had garrisons of 500 to 1,000 individuals strong. And the very point is that you don't make money from a place like this if you don't charge taxes. And those taxes are then used to pay for the army, or in part. So back to the big old customs gate theory. If you're like me, you might feel that looking at Hadrian's Wall is an anticlimax. For me, if you go to Hadrian's Wall, the best thing to see is places like Bird Oswald, Housesteads, Vindolanda. You know, those are the places that you need to see to get an idea of the impression of what this is about. But for me, when you look at the wall, I am disappointed. But that disappointment comes at a cost, because the cost is this was an amazing achievement. This was an unbelievably amazing achievement. This isn't using stone that's readily available. This isn't using stone that me and Bill have seen in Orkney that you could just lift up with a crowbar and you could just build a structure with it, right? Or it's not like stone in South Wales that is the readily sedimentary rock that you can readily quarry at places like Aberthaw or along the Roos coast, you know, the limestones. This is very hard, igneous, metamorphic rocks, sometimes sedimentary rocks that they're using to build this. And that's the achievement. Let's look at another image. And as I said at the beginning, we're going to have a lot of images tonight, but it's just to sort of get us into more of this perspective. Now, this itself, the other image coming up, and you can clearly see that little thing there is known as a mile castle. Now, a mile castle is what it is. Oh no, God, I've done it again. Don't worry, Andy. The word is, when you say "is what it is," that's a typical South Walians thing now, right? Everyone says it, right? It is what it is, right? It's not descriptive of anything. But the one thing about this is everything about what Hadrian's Wall is and what Hadrian's Wall isn't. And what we mean by that, and I'm just going to see if I can make this bigger on the screen. Oh yeah, I can. There we go. I can make it bigger on the screen. This is everything. This is sort of the epitome of Hadrian's Wall. Now, being a mile castle, wait for it, guys. You get one of these at every Roman mile, right? Hence mile castle. And between,
well.
And hang on a minute.
What a surprise!
I said a Roman mile, so it's not a well.
It is a Roman mile, yes. Right. Yes, it is.
Yes, shut up. And then between that, you've got you've got roughly, this is where it gets complicated. You've got roughly 400 meters to a turret, and you've got another 400 meters to another turret, and you've got another 400 meters to another turret, which slightly messes up this fact that they're every mile. But anyway, so the point is that there's 2 turrets between a mile castle, right? Now, these are specific. Anyway, going back to what we've got. So if we go here, right, and I get my exact caption on the screen from Alan Sorrell, get my information up. So basically, this Hadrian's Wall, Harrow Scar, Mile Castle, and Willow Ford Bridge. So this is a set of half a mile westwards of the remains of the fort of Bird Oswald, which I've been to about 3 times in my lifetime, which is great. Otherwise known as Gaboglana. So this is half a mile westwards. Now, one thing as well is we've got the remains of Willowford Bridge. Now, there's so much in this image that I can talk about now. The one thing that Alan Sorrell hasn't got right is what's going on in the hinterland and what's going off in the far distance. There'd be a lot more trees. There'd be a lot more activity. But the point of Alan Sorrell's work was to draw you onto what you're meant to be seeing. You're actually meant to be seeing the structures. That's what you're interested in. You know, he could have put loads in the distance, but that would have distracted from what you're seeing. He's an artist at the end of the day, an artist reconstructing the landscape. It's published in 1965. Lots of these things were done in 1940s, 1950s. So that's the River Irthing. Now, first of all, first things first, why didn't the Romans just follow the river system and not bother building this wall? Well, no, the Romans architecturally said we're going to build a wall from the Irish Sea all the way through to the North Sea. They weren't called the Irish Sea then, Hibernian Sea, but I think it wasn't called the North Sea, but in principle today from sea to sea. Oh my God, isn't that yeah, we won't talk about from sea to sea. That's a political mantra for a weird group of political people. But anyway, from sea to sea. Anyway, point is, if we go to this there, yeah. So going back to the significance of these mile castles. Now, one, it's vulnerable. If you capture the wall at either side, you need a couple of troops to man here, and you need a couple of troops to man here. So it makes the most vulnerable bit of this is in fact the wall. So that, and there would be steps going up to the wall at different intervals. So if you get onto the wall, it makes this site vulnerable. So you're thinking that doesn't make sense, right? The next point is you've got these 2 gateways. So if you've got a garrison in here, they've really got to defend these gateways as well. Yeah, and this is actually a smaller version of the actual more or less complete Roman fort, which is on the island of Alderney, which we've actually looked at in the past, which we can look at again. So when you're looking at these structures, you're thinking possibly they may have had a garrison of up to 50 men in them, right? But I'm probably thinking more about 30, and maybe a lower ranking centurion, which were supported by forts. When you think about it, some of these mile castles were a mile, 2, 3 miles away from the nearest fort. So if these were ever attacked, right, it's hoping that the other mile castle just down the road, right, a mile away or so, will know that you're being attacked. So one of the point with these mile castles is thus: when archaeologists have excavated these mile castles, because they're easy pickings, right, in regards, because there's quite a number of them, when you excavate one of these, what they found is at some of them, they found that the gates had deliberately taken off the gateways, right? The site has been deliberately abandoned in the Roman period, when just down the road there's another fort and a fortress, or a mile castle, which are still being manned and operational. So the whole point of that, just that one thing, you've got this frontier that goes over 74 miles, and obviously a little 75, 76 into Cumbria and varies, whatever, however way you want to look at this, right? If the whole point of a frontier is that it's a frontier, right? There's no way through. If you've got a bit that they've just thought, we can't be bothered here anymore, right? It makes the idea of this as a defensive frontier a ludicrous scenario, right? So in other words, what we're saying is that the other localities which were continually manned for up to 300 years, well, obviously not by the same people, but over 300 years, that tells us that they were there strategically, right? They were there strategically to collect what? Taxes to fund these auxiliaries that were actually here in the first place. As with all political systems, which is now flawed, right? And I say that because I don't think politics works anymore, but that's me. But anyway, the point is that with all systems, you've got to collect taxes and customs to keep something like this going, right? And that goes without saying. So if you've got one of these along the length of Hadrian's Wall that nobody's passing through, then you can't fund a garrison. So you take the gates off the hinges and people can gently go back and forth. Job done. So this is the importance of these types of sites and understanding the landscape. Now, the other interesting thing, and don't get finicky with me, folks, right? That mile castle is a little bit under 400 meters away from that turret, right? These turrets are here, extra turrets, to guard the River Irthing, and to basically, you've got this arched bridge, stone arched bridge. Now, one of the great mysteries in Britain is everything that we talk about every week, but one of the great mysteries in Roman era Britain is the lack of fully stone-made bridges. Even over the River Thames, we do believe that the bridge over the River Thames for its entire Roman existence was stone plinths with a superstructure of timber, right? But this is everything of stone. And that's the point. This is very unique. We've got the other side of Percy Bridge, which we've mentioned, and there's one or two other examples that we might think that they were all stone. But the point is, when we're looking at something like this, it is from sea to sea. It's not taken account of, like, we've got geological features. We're going to follow them, right? If the geological features should be there, as in this case, as in Walton Crags in Northumberland, we follow them. But if we've got a river, well, it's sort of there, so we'll just put the wall through across it, and one side and whatever, you can see the point.
Carl, can I ask you a question?
So evidently, no, go on then.
That reconstruction, is that actually based on archaeological evidence via digs?
Yes,
okay, yeah.
He only did stuff. I'm sorry to interrupt, Bill. He only did stuff that was based on archaeological evidence. So when we look at the reconstruction of Caerwent, they're incredibly accurate. He's done like an over. I can't get my words out. He's done like an aerial view of Caerwent, and you can clearly see that there's bits in Caerwent that didn't have buildings in them, and he's left them without buildings, right? So, okay, Bill, maybe I'm not completely accurate in what I've said, because there's going to be things missing, or there's going to be things added, right? Was it exactly?
You would have had to have huge resources to do all that, and so many sketches as well. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, he did. This was his job.
You always stress challenge, so just a little challenge in my head about that. You know how accurate it is, because there'd be a lot of work required to actually confirm that to be accurate. That maybe he did it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think what you've got to put into, I think particularly, I've got a bit of a cheat here, Bill. Right. The cheat is you're building this bridge. It has to be a certain height, right? It has to be a certain level above, you know, the height, the maximum height of the water level. You've got to allow little coracles through it. You know, that's going to be a specific height, so we can understand for this fort, for this little miniature fort, right, which we've got to call a mile castle. The walls have to be a certain height. So then you've got to postulate one detail and one fact: the width of the wall, the actual wall itself, the width of the wall. What does the width of the wall tell us that the height could have been for Hadrian's Wall? But the point is, if you've got these mile castles, the wall has to match the height of the walls of the mile castle, right? Because if they're higher than the mile castle, then the mile castles are pointless because you can just jump over the wall, right? If they're lower, then you've got other problems, right? But then the overall plane here would probably make sense. That would be what we'd say. So yeah. evidently, when we look at this, evidently there was, after all, some flexibility in the Roman military mind when constructing all of this, which has so often been criticized for its apparent rigidity. So what we talk about that, I'm not going to do this in detail now because I haven't, you know, we haven't got all the illustrations, but some widths of Hadrian's Wall are wider than other bits because there are bits of Hadrian's Wall that they just didn't have the material to build it, right? So it was narrower, and if it's narrower, Bill, then the wall's going to be short. There's going to be shorter, right? Then that puts you into problem with the mile castle. Yeah. So. Okay. And there's lots of stages of Hadrian's Wall. Actually, Hadrian's Wall actually began. I don't know if this fact is right. I need my book, but Hadrian's Wall began before Hadrian was basically born, right? Because Hadrian's Wall, a little bit south of here, is something known as Staingate, right, which went from sea to sea, which was basically the most northerly point of Roman Britannia. You know, AD 80, right? So this isn't happening until, you know, the AD 20s. And somebody asked last night. I'm going to another illustration. Somebody asked last night, said, are there many places in Britain that still carry original Roman names? The answer is yes. So therefore, was this actually really called Hadrian's Wall? And the answer is no. It was never called Hadrian's Wall in the Roman period. I'm going to let the cat back out. Go on, Mary, go on out. So it was never actually called Hadrian's Wall. It was actually called the Walls or the Great Frontier. We don't really know the name of this, right? And that is a very important point. And you know, you could say you could gesticulate that Lindum, Lincoln is you know, that's a Roman name, Londinium, London, right? But equally, Diva doesn't translate to Chester, right? Nor does Kilian. That doesn't translate to Iska, right? So, you know, there's all these different things. Anyway, as we're looking at the next image, and when I say as we're looking at the next image, make sure it is the next image, folks, and the technology has worked. This is known as housesteads. Now, there's a few really, really interesting things with housesteads, and the first bit is what I'm going to do now. Now, when we had our trip to Hadrian's Wall, did we not? Housesteads were so flooded that I didn't go on that bit because I was still languishing in Vindolanda with covered in water. But it's this housesteads Northumberland again. So Housesteads Fort, still identifiable as a fortified enclosure, and the remains at Housestead are really interesting, to say the least. So it stands on the smooth southern slope of a wave-like ridge, whose northern face is steep and rocky. Now, that gateway actually just shown in the illustration there, that was actually an operational gate. How they managed to get down, but they did. It was still operational as a proper fort. And you'll find this with lots of Roman forts, that they would put gates in even though they would go nowhere, right? We see this with Igaia in Brecon. But this is like wrapped on the hill. This is slightly, got the hill leading up to it, right? It's sort of slightly curved and wrapped and domed. This is a bit like Lincoln in a way, because Lincoln itself is like built on a bit of a sort of plateau, and in sort of like walls of like here and there, and sort of shaped to the hill. Unlike Rome, they just basically removed whole mountains, but that's something else. So this ridge forms the topographical and tactical basis of the great feat of military engineering. And again, back to that point, this is an unbelievable engineering feat. But then a little voice in my head on one side says, hang on a minute, look at the Great Wall of China. Look at that. It's 15,000 miles long. And this can't even make 100 miles long. Well, there's one difference between this and the Great Wall of China. The Great Wall of China was constructed over hundreds of years, right? This was constructed over just under a decade, right? By legionaries that were being paid a lot of money, and they had to get it done and dusted, right? None of Hadrian's Wall was built using slave labor. I'll argue with anyone who sees a source that says it was built with slave labor. It wasn't. A slave labor workforce could not build this, right? They just couldn't do it, right? Slave labor is not an effective way of building anything except the Great Wall of China. Look at the pyramids. That was not built with slave labor. You can't build these amazing things with slave labor except the Great Wall of China. But the Great Wall of China is different, because we're starting to think that the Great Wall of China was built by lots of work gangs, including people who had to serve a year in the service of the emperor in China, right? These are legionaries. These legionaries are butch legionaries, right? Who served 25 years, and after 25 years, they were actually shagged out, right? And for their service to the emperor, they would be given a bit of land, and they would settle there. Bob's your uncle, everything's fine, right? If you survive that long. Now, this is going to sound absolutely ridiculous, folks, but I'm going to make this statement, right? On one hand, you could think of legionaries as the monks of the Roman period, right? And you could think of the monks as the legionaries of the medieval period. Now, what am I talking about, right? Monks were trained in building in the medieval period. Legionaries were trained in building in the Roman period, right? Monks were, in a way, forget about Knights Templars and all the rest of it. The monks were the Lord's soldiers, right? In a basic way. The legionaries were Rome soldiers, right? You getting what I'm saying? So wherever the legionaries go, they're employed in doing something, whether it's mining, whether it's agriculture, whether it's banging bits of nails in wood, whether it's building forts, that's the same. And wherever monks went in the medieval period, they built abbeys and monasteries, and they tilled the land, right? So there's two important parallels of two different parts of history, right? The one difference between a monk and a legionary, well, okay, this is not exactly true, is it? But most monks didn't kill anybody. Legionaries did, and that's the only difference. So what we got to think about, Housesteads is one of 16 wall forts, right? There are other forts like Core Bridge. And this is associated with something called Nag Burn, where there was a gateway. And what we're thinking about is that this is built over different phasing. That's another talk for another day. So the 4 gateways led into the fort: west, east, south, and north and south, wherever you want to look at it. And when we think about this, it's got a number, 12 barrack blocks. It's got granaries. It's got a hospitium. Sorry, I can't get the word out. A hospital. It's got sort of the sort of central HQ. It's got the legator, or most senior centurion's house with his family. That's there, right? Granaries, we've got it all going on with this site. But this thing down here, this is the vicus. The vicus is very, very important when we think of a site like this. So, and when you think about it, the central building there, again, the central building there, these are the headquarters, the Principia, buildings with its arcaded courtyard. So that'd be really, really interesting. And it contained the treasury, it contained a chapel. When you talk about a chapel, it's talking Mithras and all the different gods that were available. In that chapel would be a statue of the emperor or the current emperor at that stage, and various standards of the garrison, right? Now, legionary garrison, right? But then the legionary garrison would move elsewhere. So this would be left over to auxiliaries. And at times when this was abandoned and the kitchens and the latrines were no longer being used by legionaries, the auxiliaries would then move in, and then the auxiliaries would move out, and then you've got civilians moving in and all the rest of it. So lots of these sites were, well, one thing that we do see with the story of Hadrian's Wall is that lots of these all of these things are garrisons, you know, they're points of the garrison, right? Some of them were, as I said, with the mile castles and the turrets, they were abandoned, right? But then other garrisons would go in there and man them again and rebuild everything. Sort of the one key thing. Now, when we look at the next illustration, I wonder if your reaction is going to be the same as everybody's reaction on Tuesday, right? Let's go on to the next illustration. This is also housesteads, and the bit that we're looking at next, right, if you can follow that, will be this little area here, right? Really, really interesting. We now know that there's going to be lots more buildings around this wonderful site of housesteads, and very, very interestingly, it's very likely that the gateway itself may have still been in use, wait for it, in the early 1700s. Well over 1,300 years after it was last used by the Roman military. But that's another story which we'll talk about in a short while. So let's go on to the next illustration. Now, as you're looking at that, the clue is over here, right? A couple of people jumped out last night and said, hang on, Carl, that actually looks like a medieval town. And they'd be right. It's not a medieval town, but they've got the right idea. So when we're looking at something like this, Professor Richmond back in the 1960s, he said that this was something akin to medieval townships that built around these garrison forts. And he also said a centurion of the older order would have bletched. It's not a word that we use. Bletched at the sight. Would have been sickened by the sight of seeing this. Now, this is all good and true, right? But this was the nature of things. So one thing that would stick out to me quite clearly is this: the idea of the way to go, leading now into the 400s. This would all be an erased bit of history. By about AD 500, nothing like this would be still in operation in Britain. Some of the buildings would be, as I've said, but life would not continue like this. There wouldn't be nice little rosy Roman legionary garrisons with nice little medieval-esque enclaves outside. All that would be swept away because it was not how we did things in Britain, right? In fact, I will say it. We never did things like this in Britain. It's just that we shacked up with the Romans and we did it because the Romans were here, right? We didn't evolve in a homogenous way. We didn't evolve in a way that allowed us to develop things which would last into longevity. Like Goff when he visits Germany and he sees these beautiful medieval towns that are still there with all the wooden structures everywhere, right? That was not the image of what people were seeing thanks to the Romans, was something that people did not want to continue beyond the AD 500s. And actually, even in the AD 400s, maybe 420, around there, anything like housesteads, people would say, right, we've got a smaller garrison, don't stay outside the walls, come inside the walls. So all of this was swept away. Now, there's a few really, really interesting things about this. A few really interesting things. Now, so what we've got is, we'll read what's in the book, actually, because I can't do much better than Alan Sorrell's own words. So we got Nag Burn beyond, right? The northern gateway. So, and the settlement came right up to the south wall of fort. That's interesting. Now, can we just move back to a point that I've missed out? Sorry about this. We're going to go back to a point that I've missed out, right? Something that is starkly obvious that nobody ever talks about. It's this. South to north, Roman military garrison, civilians. South to north. Now, does it take an idiot like me to work out that if you're a civilian and you've got to get from here to there to the furthest distance and into the rest of the land of northern Roman province beyond Hadrian's Wall, right? What you're doing, you're wandering through a Roman garrison, right? So unless there's Roman soldiers lined all the way along here, right, you could probably just wander along and have a look in these barrack blocks. You could probably look into the Principia. You could wander around the walls, right, which would be clearly a serious military risk. I don't see us being allowed as civilians in this modern day to wander around the Roman military base at Sennybridge. Mind you, the security is pretty crap, but that's not I may have wandered through the gate one day and wandered around the barracks, but that's not the point. But anyway, the point is that standardized military garrisons today, with barracks everywhere, civilians are not allowed, right? But interesting enough, there was such a laissez-faire Pax Romana that the Romans were okay with people just wandering back and forth. That's really interesting point that nobody ever talks about. This is supposed to be an elite Roman garrison, right? But people are allowed to just flow back and forth. So there's a sense of unease when we discuss that. So the next point is really, really important. So now I can go on to the next point, folks, right? Go back to this reconstruction. So the next point is in a point that we're going to read here. Go back to those words. The settlement came right up to the south wall of the fort, and nothing can be more indicative than this of the peaceful conditions of the times. Told you I couldn't do better than that. When evidently the elementary military rule of a clear field of fire, which I'm sure you've all heard in lots of Hollywood films, it's the clear field of fire, from the defenses was not considered important. So in other words, it was no longer a military garrison. Even though there was a military garrison there, it did not operate like a military garrison. So, folks, I raised my voice. So if it did not act like a military garrison, what the was it doing there? Right. So the answer is it was a customs post. They were collecting taxes. They were collecting revenue to be there in the first place. So again, like modern politicians, right? Let's get a little bit political a minute. This silly building in Cardiff where we've got these Welsh Assembly elections coming up. We're just paying our taxes for fat politicians to just sit on seats making decisions that don't go anywhere, right? This is what happened back then in the Roman period. Hadrian's Wall is there for people to pay taxes to be there anyway, right? When it's not actually a defensive frontier. Fact. Even the vallum, even the ditch that was filled in with buildings. There were buildings that were straddling over the ditch. So it was not defensive at all. Back to another point, folks. Back to another point. And I said this in my live show, and maybe when I get back to doing my live show in near future with all the stuff that I've had printed, I said this about Caerleon, right? And the point with Caerleon is as follows, that outside the hang on, let me get my orientation east-west. Outside the west gate, south of the west gate in Killeen, there's this massive amphitheatre, right, which towered over the defences, not too far off, of the Roman military garrison at Killeen, which indicates to me that the amphitheatre was probably built after the garrison had buggered off, right, because the garrison was no longer needed. When you build things outside and along the walls of a site like this, it tells me quite clearly, right, that it's no longer a military locality that you can readily defend. Because all you really need to do if you're going to attack this fort from the south, where are you going to get an army to attack the fort from the south? That's another point, right? But if you manage to get through one of the mile castles with like a few thousand men and it's got a garrison of 200, right? All you need to do is take over the town, gather yourselves on the roofs with a few archers, right? Take out the Roman archers because you're towering over it. Job done, Bob's your uncle. You can see that. So everything's bunched up. Now, one thing that I would say is south of Hadrian's Wall, right, is something known as Staingate. Some of it goes closer to Hadrian's Wall than other places, like Corbridge, which is 3 miles south, right, which we're going to do next. So a few other points. You can see there, you can actually see evidence of this still at Housesteads of a paved road. Now, as you know, I'm very critical about paved roads, right? The Romans did not. It's a paved road, flagstone paved road. And what we're talking about with this is this is very typical of a civilian raison d'etre, right, that grows up around these forts, as we would also find with something like Vindolanda and Chesterholm. So when you're thinking about all of this, interesting enough, within this settlement, guess what this settlement had? It had a Mithraeum, a temple to Mithras. It had up to 8 temples. This is nothing, obviously they managed to really Romanize people, shrines, all these different shrines, right? Of the life of these people, we can know very little, unfortunately. But we may suppose that many of the men were time expired veterans. So we're thinking, right, some of the people actually living outside the wall were actually veterans, right? Living with their wives and families. Local red-headed women, God help them. There would have been markets that we got evidence for. There would have been taverns that would have been along the road. Even the likes of a modern type of McDonald's with loads of rib bones hanging around that we looked at the abattoir last week. But there is something really, really interesting about this illustration, right? Very, very interesting indeed, right? Now, if we can zoom there, right? Can you see there's something quite odd, right? The road itself was much wider once because it had an in and an out gateway. But now you can see there that the gateway is no longer leading onto a road. There's a house built on the road. What the bloody hell is going on here? So looking south out of the fort, that would have been the east portal. So the blocking of the east portal of the fort gate must have happened before the building of the houses, obvious, right? So at some stage, when you think about it, an architect somewhere, probably back in London or Rome, said, right, all these gateways, all these big forts have to have a dual gateway, right, for people to go in and out. And the people manning this fort are thinking, well, hang on a minute, right? Do we really, really need to have 2 gateways? Really, right? So this is forensic archaeology at its best, right? So what we're doing. Oh, and talking about forensic archaeologists, writing an article for the local newspaper today, bit of a deadline, and I was looking at a building in Barry, and I was saying that this was actually a shop, right? And forensically, I had said it's a shop, and I built all my information up, and somebody come out with another article out of the newspaper from the 1890s, and it said, X, Y, and Z shows it was a shop. And I said, brilliant, that proves it, right? Anyway, back to this, right? So what you've got this blocked up portal. So 2 things that we can work out, right? There's a reason why you're blocking at the portal. You're blocking it up for a defensive reason, these buildings didn't exist at that stage. So when they completed the fort, these buildings didn't exist, right? There was nothing outside, right? But then they didn't feel that they needed a wide road. They needed a narrow road so they could control it, right? But then when there was no perceived threat for the fort at all, people started to overtake where the original road was, that should tower over where that blocked up entranceway was. And when this is the archaeological evidence. And this just doesn't happen at just housesteads. This happens at other walled forts, right, where whole gateways are blocked up. We actually have that Bird Oswald, one of the gateways is blocked up, right? So so it may have been due to rejection by the military man on the spot of the two grandiose architectural conceptions of the remote drawing office designer, or simply it was blocked out. Seen as they couldn't defend the dual gateway, but eventually the whole site is enveloped south of this gateway by this very interesting settlement, the sprawled settlement. And when we look at likes of Vindolanda itself, they've only excavated a third of the landscape of Vindolanda, because they've got a massive settlement to still excavate at Vindolanda. But unfortunately, they've got to really work faster at Vindolanda, because they're seeing they're seeing the ground drying up under the feet and lots of damage being caused to the archaeology. We will be coming back to housesteads again. But one last thing about this gateway before we, I'm going to try and fiddle about with the technology before we have the break, right, with you guys here, to see if I can do something. So if I don't try again, I'm not going to get it right. So in later days, so we're talking about probably the Norman period, obviously, and we're talking then all the way to the 1700s. That building itself was used as the headquarters for reavers, right, border reavers, and the basically horse dealers. Seeing as my family is a horse dealing family from Somerset, which I now admit, guys, basically, this is the archaeological evidence, and it wasn't abandoned until the early 1700s. So this was a lawless landscape in northern Cumbria and Northumberland, right, with all the border reavers. And I think we've got one person on the Tuesday evening who's actually related to a reaver or something all the way back. So what I'm going to do now, we are going to look at one more image, right, before we have a break, right? But we're not going to do all this. But I've got to try and work out how this technology works. So we're going to do that. And you're probably still looking at that image. So I've got to come back to you. And if I, right, so I'm going to change what we're doing. Share your viewed screen. No, I can't do it. I'm gonna have to come off. We're gonna have to stop sharing. And oh, hang on. Oh, hang on a minute. What I've got to do, folks, just play with me a minute. Hang on. So we get rid of that there. We go down to there, and we go to there, and I get on there, and I go back to you guys, and I show this, and I go there. And sorry guys, and I go back out. Are you now seeing a higgledy-piggledy load of Roman buildings?
Yep, we are.
Oh my God, it worked, Bill! I did it! I did it! Thank you!
You can see
I've been trying to do it for 2 weeks. Right, okay. Now, the moral of the story is I need to put everything in one file, which I haven't done. So I've just got to get it right. So Corbridge Roman Station, right? This is also in Northumberland. Caustopitium. Very interesting. You know, when I was talking earlier on about place names, I said, look, there are not many Roman place names that survived, but there are some that have, like Londinium. Or, right, this one, Corbridge, Caustopitium. And this is basically a load of buildings shagged up together. So, and also in the break, there was a little bit of news which I've got to show you in the break as well. Not after the break. I've just remembered they've reopened the an underground wall that is underground in Gloucester. They reopened it. It's been closed since 2019. So we'll do that just after the break, I think. But that was something I want to show you, which I've actually done in one of my videos. So Corstopitium, Corbridge, is 3 miles south of Hadrian's Wall. It's basically a supporting fort, or actually it was built along the old Stane Gate. Now, sorry to say, but what we could do, right? He's actually drawn this on. If we do, hang on. That makes it easier for me, folks. Believe me, right? It really does. Because there's a reason, right? So basically, that's the Stane Gate running there. What's that, Bill?
It's now vertical, the image, Carl.
Yeah, that's right. It's meant to be.
Okay. Yeah, go on. Carry on.
No, it's meant to be. I did that. Basically, that's the Stane Gate running east to west, because if I did it the other way, Bill, it's just going to get really screwy, right? So that's running east to west, right? Not north-south as it was, right? That's east to west, right? And we'll put it back in a moment. But this is basically 3 miles south of Hadrian's Wall on the north bank of the Tyne, where it was crossed by another bridge. Okay, there we go. And that bridge, otherwise known as the Watling Street, that come from all the way from London, all the way north of Watling Street, right? But this is the Stane Gate that runs from east to west. So there you go. And you can basically work out that this is all higgledy-piggledy. It really, really is. And I know you're probably getting a bit stressed by the way it is, but I just wanted to make a point there. So if we go back again, we can go bingo. Bill's happier now. It is a lot better that way. So you can see that this is all over the shop. And the reason why it's all over the shop is this was constructed probably before AD 80, right? But it's associated with the Hadrian's Wall landscape, right? It's part of the UNESCO World Heritage Hadrian's Wall landscape gubbins, right? But it's 3 miles south of Hadrian's Wall. So when we're looking at this, we're thinking about, we've got stables there which run along the Stane Gate. You've got a beautiful sort of forum courtyard landscape. The reason why this existed in the first place, along Stane Gate that run from sea to sea, right, before the construction of Hadrian's Wall 3 miles north, right, was this is classed as a police and customs barrier, right? People would pass through this on the way up from London, and this would be an intersection from sea to sea, right? So the very, very interesting thing about this is that it paints us into a time that it makes us look at the Hadrian Wall landscape as a lot more than just a wall. So on that note, what we're going to do, are you still seeing an image on there? Good. We're going to take a break. So, folks, I'm going to find out now. It's now 8:13. If anyone's got any questions, right? As Andy was just eating his dessert. And he had a load of women in the background as well, I could tell. Anyway, was that your daughter in the background earlier on, Andy?
It was my youngest one. Came up for my birthday.
I thought it was the youngest one. What, for your birthday?
Yeah, it was last week. Last on Friday, which is when I went to the Stone Circle, you see.
Happy birthday
came with
to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Andy. Happy birthday to you. Now, the big question is, did you take Karen with you?
No.
Well, that's not acceptable, Andy,
she
right?
Wasn't here. She was in London.
Oh, that's a lame excuse. She could have at least made the effort. She could have at least made the effort, but...
Well, I thought so, but, you know, yeah.
Exactly. So whenever you see videos of me at different places, right, you either know it's either Michelle's birthday or it's my birthday or it's Christmas Eve or it's New Year's Day, right? So we do plan to go somewhere and on our anniversary as well. So well, that's nice. Why I asked. Yeah. So, Andy, what's going to happen after the break? It's all going to go to pot, but hopefully not. How was that experience tonight?
That's okay. The sound a little bit distorting in occasionally in places, but otherwise absolutely fine. I did one question. The illustrations that what's his name does, they've got lots of castellations all the way along it. Did it have castellations all the way along it? I know it did in some places.
I wanted Bill to spot that one, right?
Oh, sorry. I'll let Bill say them.
He's not there. He's gone. But I wanted Bill to say the castellations, and I'm just thinking the idea of castellations is a bit of artistic license for Alan Sorrell, because we don't have any of that evidence surviving. In the back of my mind, I think there's something slightly at that height still surviving at one of the forts, maybe indicating something. But oh, Bill.
Yes.
We were just talking about you, right? On the illustrations, it showed a lot of castellations, right?
Yes. Yes.
Now I just said maybe some of that was artistic license.
Yes.
Because castellations like that make something very, very vulnerable. Because if you're gonna defend, right, you can't really hide behind something. You've got to tug that down, because your body needs to crunch up. So, and it's going to be a lot more work to create castellation. So maybe it's going to be a much wider castellation with a little gap, much wider castellation with a little gap, or it might not need any castellations at all.
Exactly. Castellations cost money, and I thought they came in much later, actually, Carl, in the medieval period. That's what I thought.
Castellations are more of a medieval thing. But when you think about Alan Sorrell is up against that bit of the archaeology, as I said to Andy just then, there's one tiny bit of Hadrian's Wall. I can't remember which fort it is, right? Along Hadrian's Wall, where it looks like we got a tiny bit of wall at the original height with something showing something, right? But we're not really sure what that is. So, is there a need for that level of castellations, and maybe not?
I would say not.
So, but back to that, Bill, right? We haven't got all the evidence, so Alan Sorrell's only going by what he's got to work on, right?
Yeah.
So so good point. Right. So anything from you, Bill, before we have a break?
I will have a question afterwards, Carl, but I need to consult my reference book before I ask you the question about Hadrian's Wall. Okay.
I'm glad you're consulting books, because this is done with books now anyway. So there we go. So thank you for that. Hang on a minute, Bill. Listen to what Richard's got to say, right? Straight face.
Come on, Rich. Go for
it. No,
I was a bit concerned about the castellations as well.
Yeah.
It just didn't sort of, as Bill said, just didn't see the use.
Yeah.
The reason for it. Along the
Because
whole length of the wall.
Yeah.
I suppose it would give it a more of a military use, or sort of appearance, as if he was doing these drawings to.
As I said, what Alan Sorrell was trying to do is trying to make an impact for the average everyday bumpkin to understand the history and archaeology of these monuments, and he's done it right. You can see it looks really good, and obviously castellations, obviously it's military, and you think, right, we're going to go away from this. It's a military frontier. So back then, that's what they were tying into. But when you think about castellations, if you're going to and this is a point, if you're going to run along a wall to get to a turret that is under attack, and you've got castellations along the length, you're going to die. So that is a point. Obviously, having little loopholes along the way might be useful, but being able to see over them is obviously useful as well. But obviously, we need to take a little bit with license, So you could have a little box and you could stand on it and overlook, but that's very interesting. Anyway, thank you for that, Richard. If there's nothing else Andy's got to say, we'll go to Goff and we'll have a break. As you could hear earlier on, my sheep were going nuts, so I got to check on them. So anything you want to say, Goff?
Nothing to add to that. That's very interesting.
Snap.
No, hang on. No, that's not right, because Richard didn't say it.
I said it for him.
Yeah, but it's not snap, is it? Because if Richard had said it, then it would be snap, right? So right, okay, we're gonna take a 10-minute. We'll take a 10-minute break and we'll be back.
Okay.
Oh, let's have a look. Vai come?
Ooh. Big glasses. Yeah. Right.
Bel enchanté, la route along le plan square. Mon corps resiste encore. So which country we're moving to, Richard? If it goes wrong next month,
Be back. Right. The sheep? The sheep? They were quite noisy during your talk, Carl.
They were quite. I think they were jealous. Put
them to bed.
Well, yeah, I've told them off. What is it? The little babies are running everywhere, and it's just like, oh my god, yeah. So they are underneath where I'm talking to you.
What do you mean underneath?
This is a buyer. They're actually living underneath you.
Oh, you're a two-story, are you?
Yeah, they're living underneath.
I thought it was a roundhouse you'd built.
Yeah, it's got double glazing.
Why don't you send us a photograph?
I thought I had. All right, then.
No.
I'll have to then.
All
right. No. All right, then. I will. All right, then. I will show you photos next week. Right. Next week. I just wanted to say two things. Don't forget, the monies are now due for May and June. Yeah. The monies are now due for May and June, the £50. So I thought I'd mention that again. And then finally, before we get on to looking at this thing in Gloucester quickly, if this system suddenly shuts down, right, until I work out how it works, right, it might be that you need to all sign back in, but we'll just see how that goes. Anyway, we're gonna crack on. We're going to go over to me making a big mistake, but right, there's a window there, and I've got to get the window open, which is going to be not there. hang on a minute. Oh, Gloucester, Roman ruins, Gloucester. Right, there we go. And hopefully I can get straight into that. And I'm going to knock that there. Gloucester. Is it that? There. Good.
No. Ah.
Got
Now
a
we can see
picture,
it.
but no
Yeah.
sound, Carl. Your mic's switched off on this one.
How do you get through to
Oh,
him?
I'm back again.
Yep, you're on. Cool.
And are you seeing this?
Yep.
Right, I just want to show you this. This is sort of old news, but it's new news. Basically, they reopened us being able to see this since it was closed down just in 2019. And underneath Gloucester, this is not the only bit of Roman wall, but this is one of the bits of Roman wall. So this is the Roman ruin underneath a shopping centre trapdoor. Look at that. Isn't that great? And I've noticed a bit, it's obviously at water level there because it's slightly damp. But anyway, this is known as the King's Bastion, contains a section of Gloucester's Roman wall and a medieval defensive tower, right? So a Roman monument which lies underneath a trapdoor in a shopping centre has reopened. This was part of the Roman wall and medieval defensive tower excavations in 1960. And it's talking about the ruins lie in a chamber 3 meters below the floor, below the ground, which was closed up for almost 7 years due to flooding and the pandemic. And basically they're saying that they've undertaken the work there. They've had to pump it out and deal with it. So if you ever go into Gloucester, there's a trap door there. But I think you need to go to the museum and you can get tickets and you can go down and you can see the Roman wall. Now, I'm looking at that and some of the reports that I read is that is actually a Roman bastion, right, with the wall at the back. So I'm not exactly sure if that is completely Roman, and that's a part of the medieval stuff or not. But if you go down there, you can actually see this stuff. So I thought I'd actually mention that. So I thought that would be of interest to everybody if you ever go to Gloucester. Now, what we need to do, we need to go back to me playing with the controls, and I got to go there. And if I go there, and I go there, and hopefully you should be seeing what we were looking at. Are you seeing? No, right there, not there.
Yeah.
No, we've done that. Right. So if we go back to, hang on, if I go back to there. Now, are you seeing Corbridge again?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
You are?
Yeah, I think it is. Yes. It's not
Yeah,
Housestead.
Housesteads?
It's not Housesteads, no.
No,
basically there's a bit of a curly wall there, and there's a bit of like a horse stable on the right. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Right, good, excellent, good. We're gonna double check that you're seeing what I'm seeing. That is Kaya Went. Can you see that?
No, we're still on Corbridge.
Corbridge. Yeah.
You're not seeing Kaya Went?
No.
Right, okay. So, oh my God, I'm gonna have to tweak this. Right, okay. Going back to that there. If I share the screen and I go to there, stop share. I will work this out. So eventually, there, and you should be seeing. Are you seeing Kaya Went?
Yeah.
No, yes.
Good. Let's go back to Corbridge.
It's gone again.
No.
But you're back in Corbridge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Excellent. You're meant to be at Corbridge. That's where you're meant to be. So, as you can see, that Corbridge is a really, really weird one because Corbridge itself, just a recap, 3 miles south, it's associated with the Stane Gate, which is sort of the the vertical road on the thing, which it would in fact be from east to west. It's got the stables there. And we're talking about this was built well before Hadrian's Wall, 40 years before Hadrian's Wall, over that. It's seen as a customs and post and so on. So this is really important. So it helps us understand in a way, if you're looking at this forensically, why is this a customs post along Stane Gate intercepting what the Watling Street that goes north-south, right? Associated with a bridge. Why is there a customs post along Stane Gate, right? And then it speaks out that you've got a custom. Then it speaks out that when Hadrian's Wall is constructed, that obviously indicates what the use of the Hadrian's Wall is, rather than just a talk of it being a military frontier. So what you can see, very interesting illustration. What you can see, the two irregular fortified, these are fortified enclosures here. These are for the craftsmen and the armorers of the later Hadrian's Wall. And obviously this over here, you've got the stables, very interesting courtyard structure. So thinking about this locality, it's more than just like a customs frontier gate, right? It's got water fountains, it's got oblong storage tanks, it's got pedestals, it's got all the functions of a market town. This is what we're talking about. And obviously you can see that is a typical temple-like structure as well, where I've got my cursor. So, and you've got another temple there. So all of this points towards the evidence of understanding the future Hadrian's Wall. This is very, very familiar to me. And the reason why this is very, very familiar to me, this is Caer Went. Now, I would have I've got a lot. I could, if you just dump me at Caer Went now, I could just basically take you around for a few hours and I'd be really happy doing it. Obviously not in the dark. However, this building itself is associated with the shops and the frontage leading directly where you're looking at it now, directly in where you're looking at it, that would be where the Roman road would be, right? This would eventually lead to various different localities, but this would then lead up to, if you go westwards, this would go to Cardiff, and then that would go from Cardiff all the way through to Cowbridge, and Cowbridge to Pyle, and further on into Carmarthen. Now, having looking at this, and over there where the cursor is, this is one building, and then that goes over to another building. And in the back here, when we look at the illustration, this is like the housing. So this is all the shops, and you've got a drain where the cursor is there. This would have been capped off as a culvert, and that's what we're looking at. So basically what we got these buildings, and that building that I said in the background, and you've got the street, and here you've got the culvert. That's what I was talking about with the drain, right? That's the drain. A typical sense of Roman shops. Now, again, when hang on a minute, did I say Caerleon earlier on? I said Caer Went. This is Caer Went. Yeah, I say that again.
That's not Caer Went, is it?
Yeah, it is Caer Went. Yeah, did
okay.
Guys, I do apologize, right? I know full well this is Caer Went, but I may have slipped into Caerleon, right? This is Caer Went, right? So sorry about that. My apologies. It's Caer Went, right? So back to what I was saying. This is the main road that leads through Caer Went, right? I don't know why I said Caerleon. I really don't. But this here is where you would stand on the road, the A48 in Caer Went, the walled city of Caer Went. As I said, if you dump me in Caer Went, I could take you around for 3 or 4 hours quite happily. And then you've got these buildings here where the cursor is. These represent shops, and you've got a whole like building behind, and you've got a courtyard. Now, when you're thinking about something like this, one of the things that we do know is, again, in the background, this is a really good reconstruction, but in the background, you've got some castellations along the wall that are completely and utterly wrong. But other than that, the reconstruction is very, very accurate. There's another one of Caerwent taken from another angle, where there are areas at the back northern side of Caerwent within the walls that are not occupied with any form of houses at all, right? And that's on the other illustration. But this is the area of Caerwent which is like densely populated. So you're looking at this, and you're looking obviously at the oxen and the cart and various sort of people in the street, and getting an eye. This is the left here. That there is known as Pound Lane. That's Pound Lane. So what you do, you go to Caerwent, you go along the main road, you see the evidence of these buildings, and you go down Pound Lane, right? And further on down Pound Lane, there's another site to actually see on the left as well, which is another townhouse. But you can see that the evidence for all of this is based primarily on the archaeology that is excavated. And at Caerwent, when I was actually excavating at Caerwent, they actually, what we were coming across were actually sort of a pennant type roof tile rather than terracotta roof tile. So when you talk about Roman buildings, there's probably a few more, but four primary roofing materials: terracotta tiles, sort of pennant sandstones, particularly in South Wales, sort of other stone roofs. You'd also have wooden tiles on roofs as well. So with Caerwent in particular, the archaeological evidence is lots of pennant sandstones. We've in Barry, we've got box loads of pennant sandstones from the excavation at Caerwent, along with lots of pottery and tiles and so on, which is a report that I will be getting on to writing over the next few years after my excavations finished there in 1997, long time ago. Now, when you do go to Caerwent, obviously there's the evidence of the basilica, which is where my cursor is here. A sort of off screen towards the right hand side is where you've got the temple as well. And if we want to think about somewhat about this site, the wall went around Caerwent, not in AD 100, not in AD 200, went around Caerwent in AD 300. And it's likely the wall went around Caerwent as a fashion statement, right? But it was a good fashion statement, because in the AD 420s, 430s, it was very useful, because it was like a safe, defended place. It's 40 acres. It's not a massive place. The population of Caerwent was at a push somewhere in the region of about 2,000 people, somewhere like that. It wasn't a massive place, but it was a big place for South Wales. And it was, as towns go, Caerwent was probably, the biggest Roman era town in the whole of Cymru Wales. You could argue Moradunum, Carmarthen was pretty big, but as towns go, because Moradunum was a military base before it became a town, this itself is a very large area. And just a few things I'll just mention. Caerwent fell into decay by the middle of probably going into the AD 400s. But that decay in the middle of 400s was more to do with the fact that there was a massive decrease in population. People continue living at Caerwent over the many centuries into the Norman period, where a moated site was actually built into the southeast defences of Caerwent. Now, the other image that we're going to look at is an image that we've already seen, which Bill loves. Lulligston. We had an illustration of Lulligston last week, And as it was Wednesday, what I did on Tuesday, because we didn't get to Lullingston on Tuesday, I basically read out a list of, different phases of building at Lullingston. But the one archetypally, and just as Andy didn't hear that, what I would say is from the book on Lullingston, it would be very useful for me to possibly mention a bit about the chronology at Lullingston. This is in Kent. Again, Alan Sorrell at his best. So this site itself, like any Roman villa in Britain, the 5,000 Roman villas that may have existed in Britain, right? This site was occupied previously. And this is, again, we'll just rehash this as a reminder. We know that a native farmer lived here from before AD 80, and then after AD 80 into AD 90, they're starting to build this landscape. Nothing like this yet. So by roughly into the AD 150s, this site itself has become a fully Romanized place, right? Lots of the buildings are there, right? Other than this on the right here, on the left, other than this on the left, this is added later, right? So this is a full reconstruction that you might actually look in about the probably roughly about the 300s, right? But what this is an interesting point. I mentioned this last week. In AD 180, right, the original Romanized farming family had gone, and the people moving here by about AD 180, this is archaeological evidence, was a Mediterranean Roman family. They didn't last long. They were only here for about 20 years, and then it was that the house was abandoned and it moved into industry. It was a tannery. So it took about another sort of 50 years, about coming into about 280, where it was reoccupied by another native British family, not a Roman Mediterranean family, but a native British family. Very interesting. And two other points is that you've got this this temple-like mausoleum over here, associated with this Roman family by about AD 300. And what's very interesting, 2 points, is that the baths are dismantled for the next phase, when it's very likely that this could have turned into some kind of religious settlement, right? Religious Christian settlement, because this site itself went over to a Christian sort of Christianized sort of landscape. We've got a Christian church here, but it ended its days because it ended up being consumed with fire. And as I said last night, when you've got buildings that have been consumed by fire in the archaeological record, what happens is the doom mongers. And what I mean by that is that people start talking about, oh, the Anglo-Saxons must have got to the site. It is Kent. The Anglo-Saxons must have got to the site and they set light to it, right? And they killed everybody, right? This is where forensic archaeology comes in, right? If you start excavating the site and you start to think, right, where's all the domestic pottery? Where's all the plates and stuff that would have been shattered on the ground and on the mosaics if the site had been attacked, right? Where's all that evidence? So if that evidence is absent, it means that a site had been abandoned. And lo and behold, somebody had set up home in there, set light to the thing went up in flames. So just because you find things that are scorched to bits, right, as this site was, and then it protected the stuff underneath that the archaeologists excavated, it doesn't mean to say that it was attacked by raiders. And finally, there's another point with Alan Sorrell's work. It's a place that I visited. Oh, hang on. Hang on. We've got to go out of here. We're going to have some more shenanigans again. We've got to go out. And we've got to go there. And I'm hoping that, can you see a stony building in the background? No?
No, just got you.
Just got me. Right, okay, we're going to get back to it. Right, so we're going to... Oh, right, that's because the sharing finished. Right, so we're going to go to there. And we should be looking at here. Are you looking at Giles Hoff?
Yep, we got an image.
Right, this is Giles Hoff. This is really interesting. This is on Shetland. Hang on, we're supposed to be doing Roman archaeology. We are going to be doing it in a second, right? Now, if suddenly a bit of money comes my way, I'm gonna complete my PhD, or basically more or less start it again, which was going to be looking at Roman archaeological evidence on Shetland and Orkney. I didn't do it. The pandemic come in the way. The university disappeared. Job done. It didn't work. But and the one point, the reason mentioning this is that building there is not. That building there, that square building, is a medieval building. But this here is a broch, which will be very familiar to me and Bill. And with a little settlement there as well. So this broch was in full operation in AD 200, which is a date of most of the stuff that we've looked at tonight from the Roman era along Hadrian's Wall. And the point is that just because this is on Shetland, right, it's still in the idea of Roman era Britain. The Romans didn't send a garrison to Shetland. It was too far north. They wouldn't have had the boats to do it anyway, right? But there were some trading vessels that managed to get to Shetland, that managed to trade some goods, nevertheless, like they did with the Orkney archipelago. And the one thing to say about this, to get to this site, you've got to look up at the sky, right? And you've got to drive across the airfield before a plane lands, right? That's how you get to Giles Hoff. So thinking about this, understanding this, what you are seeing is a broch with little buildings around, right? And I've been in all these buildings because look at all these here. Right, you go into all these and they're really, really well preserved. They're in fact so well preserved that they're still standing at the original height. Right, they're amazing buildings, right? And this broch itself, although it's not very high standing, right, which is basically, you know, that's what we're looking at broch wise there. But nevertheless, this gives you an impression of what other people were doing at the same time as what other people were doing in the south. So this was the completest form by about AD 400. So I wanted to give you sort of an idea, sort of a juxtapose of Roman era Britain tonight, just from a few images that we've looked at in regards to the likes of Alan Sorrell's work. So what we're going to do now, I want to introduce another little subject, because we're going to be finished by 9:10, and the other little subject is going to be introducing Colchester and the temple at Colchester, right? And some very interesting news about Colchester, which I got wrong. And as you know, I like to admit when I've got wrong, because none of us are gods. So I'm going to go there. We're going to go there. We're going to go there. And I'm going to go back on my screen, and we're now off. And I'm going to find my images. Okay, we're going to go again. I've not used the. I'll tell you a little story about this laptop now. I'll just go to downloads. And I'm just going to go to here, and we're going to get that there, and we're going to go back to sorry about this faffing, folks. Maybe I need a lesson. Right, there we go. And what you should be seeing is the temple, a temple building. You was looking at a temple building?
Yeah.
Right. Yes, I know, Bill. That's Lego, right? It's the Lego building of the temple of Claudius in Colchester itself. But I just wanted to mention a couple of things about this, right? Oh, I'll tell you a little bit about this computer, right? When I bought this, right, I bought it to edit the book, right? Because I just couldn't get the book edited, right? So I was and I come out the shop with it. It cost me £1,000, and I come out the shop and I thought I could use Zoom on it, but I couldn't use Zoom on it a year ago. So we had a few problems last week, and I thought, right, I gotta see if my Chromebook works on Zoom, and it does. It's worked really well, except for these problems. So I just wanted to mention I've made a mistake, right? And you can get an idea of the scale. This was 20 meters tall, by the way, the temple of Claudius in Colchester. And that's an aerial view. And I actually was under the wrong impression, that the temple of Claudius was never rebuilt after the likes of Boudicca's revolt, but it was actually rebuilt, and it was rebuilt bigger and better. So if we want to look at this, the footings of this site, in a roundabout way, are actually the original temple of Claudius. And we do believe that a substantial amount of the temple of Claudius was still standing in around AD 800. And there was a substantial amount of it still standing when they eventually built this castle there. And it was probably fully functioning by the likes of the AD 1200s as the castle that you see today. And I know I've mentioned some of this before, but yeah, I did make a mistake. It was rebuilt. So within 2 years of the Boudiccan rebellion, by about AD 62, AD 63, they completely rebuilt the temple. Right now, there was so much of the temple left that when they went to build a castle in Colchester, they just demolished what was there of the temple. And this is completely the castle at Colchester. When I say completely, 90% of it is utilizing Roman material, reused from Colchester, reused from the temple. There it is. And when I said the castle, I made this remark a few weeks ago. I said the castle is actually a Roman castle, right? Because it technically is, because it's using Roman material. But the castle was being up and running the 11 to about the 1200s. But what we've got here is, on the left here, this is the castle, and on the right here, this is in fact the temple. So in fact, in reality, if we go back to the aerial view, the temple was actually slightly bigger than the castle template today, which is quite extraordinary. And what is extraordinary, right, is that around here was an absolutely massive precinct, a huge precinct that went around the temple. So we're going to do more of this when we look at Colchester and the Boudiccan stuff. But it's fitting to remember that when Boudicca burnt it to the ground, and do you know what? I'm going to try something else a minute with the technology, right? I'm going to type in, I don't know, we've probably lost that image, but if I want to end with this image, Colchester Colchester Roman temple. And I'm just going to find this now, and we're going to look at an image that I always love looking at. And if I can't, oh, there it is. And I'm going to see how this goes up on the screen now. Hang on a minute. Nope, I lost it a second. Yeah, I know you can't see anything because it's not like the old technology. Right, so here we go. Right, so right there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go off, and I'm going to come back to you guys, and I'm going to try and get this here. Stop the sharing, and we go back to the sharing again. And we go there, and Chrome tab there, Colchester Temple. There, got it.
You need to put your sound back on. We've got the picture, but no sound from you, Carl. Nope. Should be on now.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Did you have to unmute me then or something?
I did unmute you, yes. So maybe that's what
this is weird. There's some weird things going on. But again, just that sort of image on the right there, that you can actually see the destruction of the Temple of Colchester. And to make a point, to make this sort of final point tonight, is that the Temple of Colchester was seen to be the actual, the full representation of Rome, right? So by destroying the temple and the people in it, you were actually not just destroying the idea of Rome, you were destroying the idea of Roman gods, and you were destroying the memory of the Roman emperor Claudius, who'd actually come to Britain to conquer Britain, right? And by taking this temple and eradicating it, that was very, very important. And what we've got, a very famous image, and is a very famous image, is of a bronze head of Claudius that was found in a nearby river, that we do actually believe was actually in the temple itself, or mounted outside as like a statue of Claudius himself. And the biggest point to be making now is that by rebuilding the temple, you are saying to the people of Britain, we're back. You've destroyed the temple, but we are now back, and making it bigger and better than it was before. And the irony is whether this is based on any archaeology rather than hearsay, but the Temple of Claudius probably became one of Britain's early churches. And we do have an early church in Colchester, which we've which we've seen. We've seen the early church in Colchester. But again, looking at that, the burning sort of image, they rebuilt the whole thing. And I was just perturbed to think that I had told you that it hadn't been rebuilt, but it certainly was. So obviously the vaults that we've got, and if I can find one more image, the vaults, there we go. There it is. Underneath there, the vaults themselves of the temple are still standing there, supporting the temple of Claudius. That was very great.
We've been on there, Carl.
Yeah, we've been down there. Yes, we have. Yes, you have. So what we are going to do, we're going to call it a night now. And maybe what I might do, that's one thing. There's another illustration, and this here, can you see that illustration on the right there? What's happened is that they decided to go big time. So they've got the temple in the bit middle, right? And what they've got this massive courtyard, and then you've got this huge veranda sort of complex around the outside, right? Like an arcaded complex around the outside. We've got evidence of that in the archaeology. That's how we're able to do the reconstruction. But the Romans were basically saying, look, we've done this. This is our town now, right? Even though you've erased it, we are back. And that is basically the message of the temple. And basically Camillus, which Camilla Junum's named after, is basically the local god of war. So so when you think about it, the native name has survived into the Roman name that has survived into the modern name, and I think that is the irony of history. On that note, the irony of archaeology is we've looked at the archaeological evidence, and let's see if there's anything anyone's got to say before we finish. And I can curl up with my cats. Bill, anything you want to say?
Yes, history is not a science, as we know, and sometimes it's while looking at the subject matter from a different angle. Earlier, you mentioned the possibility that the so-called Hadrian's Wall was started before he became an emperor. So I have a suggestion. The emperor immediately before Hadrian was Trajan. Okay. Yeah. Now, as we know, he had a big ego, i.e., his column and other things. So he had the sort of mentality which would compel him to undertake a major project like that. So maybe he did he was responsible for starting the wall, and Hadrian then was there after Trajan to complete it, and it required some sort of name, but I don't think it was ever called Hadrian's Wall. As you said.
Never was.
No, probably called the Great Wall or whatever. Yeah, just something to mull over, a possibility. I like it.
And maybe then it because what we do have all the evidence. So when we do look at some archaeological evidence of some of these individual forts, so whenever we do it, we're gonna go back to that point, and there is stuff like Corbridge. It's like 40 years before, well, over 40 years before. You know, and you're thinking, well. It's not all about Hadrian. You mentioned Trajan. Trajan was this great military general as well. You've mentioned it. He's got this big column, right? You know, the victory over the Dacians, that just wasn't a small thing, right? And what you've just said is a really valid point. Yeah, it's a really valid point, that. So anything else, Bill?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Carl. Most interesting.
Good. Right. Hang on a minute, Bill.
What?
I wonder, right? Right?
I think you might be right, actually.
I don't know. He's cottoned on to this now.
Okay.
Yeah. But Richard, anything you want to say?
No.
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 Oh, go on, Richard.
Oh, it's very, very interesting. Just for you.
It was very interesting. Yeah, it was.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
Okay, thank you. Right, we'll go on to Goff, and then we'll do Andy. Anything you want to say, Goff?
Oh, I like Bill's theory. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm wondering, do we know what they called it at that time? What did the Romans call the wall?
I in the back of my mind, the Valus, the great Valum, the great sort of frontier, the great sort of, it was the Great Wall. It was never, all those different things spring to mind from sort of vague sources that I can remember. The Great Valum, the Great Ditch, the Great Wall, the great sort of frontier, but it was never called Hadrian's Wall. It's just, we've called it Hadrian's Wall because it was, okay, Bill's got a good point. It was completed in the reign of Hadrian.
Yes, okay.
I think that basically says everything that Bill said, everything that I said, what you agree with. It was completed by Hadrian, right? And the wall of Antonius Pius. Now that's really interesting. That goes through Glasgow and Stirling from sea to sea further north, right? That itself is very much of Antoninus Pius. However, it's basically stone and an earthen bank on top. Now, there's something very interesting here. And I may have mentioned this before. I'm not sure I have. I've mentioned it to some of you guys sometime. If you're going to build a frontier, right, why do you need to build a wall? Why don't you just build a ditch and a bank, right? Which the Romans did with many of their other frontiers, right? Why did they build the wall? But they didn't build a wall years later when Antonius Pius built his wall further north. No, it's Antonius Pius, the Antonine Wall, which wasn't actually a wall. It was stone with earth on top of it, which went up much quicker, right? So you've got a disparity between Hadrian's Wall and the Antonine Wall. They're very, very different. Now, the Antonine Wall had stone fortresses, right, and forts, but it was principally made of earth and timber, right? Now, the other frontier, there's two that are north of the Antonine Wall, or one's called the Gask Ridge, which is basically a load of signal stations along the road. And you're just thinking, but hang on a minute, there's not a wall there of stone, and there's not an earthen wall there either. So it's like over different times, they built different frontiers, and let's say it, for different reasons. And if we're talking about different reasons, one may have been for defense, but the other two are not. So I'm going to go with the Antonine Wall for defense, Hadrian's Wall not, and the Gask Ridge, which is north of Antonine Wall, as something completely different, which was built before all this anyway. So don't go there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Goff. If there's nothing else. And I'm missing Melvin Bragg, by the way.
Oh, no. Well, listen, Misha Glenny, he's quite good.
Yeah, I've heard Misha Glenny. I just think, as he said himself, he needs to bed in. And I got to be honest with you, I hope he's not one of these presenters that only does it for a year and buggers off.
Yeah.
That upsets me with the BBC. But mind you, we all know about BBC presenters. Right. Okay, then. Andy.
Sure. Yeah, I've got nothing to add. Other than, am I remembering right that parts of Hadrian's Wall was an earth bank before they built the wall?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. That, yeah.
You are completely right. And actually, I need to get all the facts and fixtures in front of me. So at one stage on the eastern part was all stone at one stage, and then the western stuff was earthen, right?
Yeah.
That is the point.
Yeah, it's the western.
So then they thought, all right, so one bit is narrower and thicker than the rest because they don't have enough people. Probably not that they run out of material. They didn't have enough people to build it, right? Because obviously each of those blocks needs to be carved and it needs to be dressed. So that's a group of people. So if you don't have enough, and at that stage is probably the military is just thinking, oh God, this is costing too much. What are we actually doing here? Do we do what? It's just for show. That's the point. It's narrower because it's just for show, right? If it was for military defense, it would be the same all the way through, right? So lots of comparisons with the Great Wall of China, and the other thing as well is 2 points. I know we're going to go, but 2 points. If this is a permanent frontier, right, why do you build another frontier 20 years later further north, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that don't make sense.
Why?
It don't make sense.
That happens in planning all the time these days, though. You get your boundary, and then somebody, because it's a bit vague, you push it a bit further.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. In this case, Andy, a lot further, but that's not the point.
Nobody will notice.
Yeah, it's just a bit further north. So when you look at the Great Wall of China, the Great Wall of China Sea is 15,000 miles long. Apparently, we really haven't found all of it. So when we think about the Great Wall of China, it's like that was because they were extending territory, right? Oh yeah, don't worry, we'll just move it a bit further forward. And actually, one weird fact about the Great Wall of China, we'll finish with this one, is they actually use rice to bind lots of it together.
Rice cement.
They did.
Whoa.
They use rice cement. It's a fact, right? But those bits of the wall haven't really survived as well, because you can probably work out why. So, I'm glad you've been with us tonight. I've really appreciated that. So, I'm going to probably have a little rest now, because I've had a lot of early hours in the morning trying to get this book completed. So, this is that. So, I'm going to call it a night. So, if nobody else has got anything else to say, thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Night, Carl. Night, Phil. Night, Richard.
Hi, guys.
Andy,
Good to
and
see
everyone
you.
else.
Thanks, Carl. Bye.
Night, guys.
Cheers, everyone.
Night, Dick.
So long.
Well, hey, night, Dickie. Don't forget tomorrow, Dick. He's gone. All right. Okay. That's that. So we're gonna. Anyway, folks, I don't know if anyone joined us online. I'm gonna see if there is anyone there. I've lost my connections, really, because I couldn't check with this on my mobile, you see. So if anyone's still there, right, we'll have a little chat. If nobody is there, then I'm not going to have a chat, right? So I got to charge my phone up a minute. So we're going to have that there. I'm going to go on to my YouTube. There's my YouTube. And there we go. Things are very bad now. Are they? Why my Civil War prediction was delayed. Don't know what the hell that's about. Right, so let's just see you guys. There. Alan Sorrell. It's live.
Wayfair's big sale is back.
And we got some weird shit on you.
Of deals, like sofas from £249.
I don't know if anyone was online tonight. But nobody's obviously there, which is a shame. But anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe. As there's nobody there, I'm gonna go. So thank you very much for joining us. I'm gonna look in the chat box. Yeah, this is weird. This is weird. Now, you know when I do this chat box thing, right? Right, there was a message, but there's no messages here now. I'm sure there was a message that said that. So why can't I see the messages? One particular. Right, okay. I can't see it. Anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe. I've got to bugger off now, and I gotta get somewhere tonight. So get back to my digs. I gotta have a shower. Stuff happening. So yeah, cool. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Anything in the chats? Yeah, that's right. Nothing in the chat box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Click that 6. I can't find that message. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Nosta, diolch yn fawr i chi. Gwelwch chi eto. Nosta. Night, guys. Do.